Some battles are fought in kitchens, not trenches. When Gordon Ramsay walked onto the Tonight Show stage with his trademark intensity and that commanding presence that had made him the world's most feared chef, nobody expected him to reveal the most tender secret of his culinary career. Jimmy Fallon had planned a lively interview about Gordon's latest restaurant venture. The audience was ready for the passionate outbursts and colorful language that always came with a Gordon Ramsay appearance. But what Gordon was about to confess would silence Studio 6B and prove that sometimes the most important meals aren't served in Michelin-starred establishments. The cameras were rolling. The audience was already energized by Gordon's magnetic presence, and then he spoke 10 words that changed everything. These men fought for freedom and can't afford food. What came next wasn't just television. It was a revelation about honor, gratitude, and the sacred responsibility that comes with having everything when others have nothing. Gordon Ramsay had always been known for his perfectionism and relentless standards, the chef who demanded excellence from everyone around him, who built an empire on never accepting anything less than the best. But what audiences didn't know was that Gordon's drive for perfection had been shaped by a deep understanding of what it meant to go without, and that understanding had awakened a calling to serve those who had given everything for their country only to be forgotten by the society they protected. The secret Christmas missions had begun 7 years earlier, during a particularly difficult December, when Gordon was walking through downtown Los Angeles after a late meeting with investors. Despite his success and the warmth of the holiday season approaching, Gordon had been feeling disconnected from the true meaning of his work, questioning whether feeding wealthy celebrities was really making any difference in the world. I was walking past this alley behind my restaurant when I saw this older man digging through our garbage bins. Gordon later explained he was wearing a military jacket, looked like he hadn't eaten in days, and he was trying to find scraps from meals that cost more than most people make in a day. The man was Frank Rodriguez, a 58-year-old Vietnam veteran who had been living on the streets for 3 years after losing his apartment when his disability benefits were delayed. Frank had served 2 tours in Vietnam, earned a Purple Heart, and had spent 40 years working construction before injuries and PTSD made steady employment impossible. I went up to Frank and asked if he was hungry. Gordon remembered. When he told me he hadn't had a hot meal in 4 days, I brought him inside and cooked for him myself. Not leftovers, not charity food. I made him the best bloody meal I could prepare. That conversation over a late-night dinner had opened Gordon's eyes to the reality facing many military veterans, men and women who had risked their lives for their country only to return home to a society that often overlooked their struggles with mental health, physical disabilities, and economic hardship. Frank told me about other veterans he knew who were living on the streets, sleeping in shelters, going days without proper food. Gordon said, "These were heroes who had served their country with honor, and they were struggling to survive while I was serving overpriced meals to people who had never made a real sacrifice for anyone." That realization had inspired Gordon to create what he privately called Operation Christmas Kitchen, an annual mission where he would spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day preparing and serving meals to homeless veterans throughout Los Angeles. Gordon's approach was characteristically thorough and passionate. Instead of simply writing checks to existing organizations, he had researched the specific nutritional needs of homeless individuals, learned about the challenges veterans faced in accessing services, and developed a comprehensive plan for providing not just food, but dignity and recognition for their service. Every Christmas, Gordon would wake up at 4 a.m. and begin preparing gourmet meals for homeless veterans: roasted turkey with herb stuffing, prime rib with Yorkshire pudding, fresh vegetables prepared multiple ways, homemade desserts, and hot beverages served in proper cups rather than disposable containers. "I cook for them like I'm cooking for the Queen," Gordon said with obvious pride, because they earned that level of respect. They put their lives on the line for strangers, and the least I can do is put the same effort into their Christmas dinner that I put into any high-end restaurant meal. Over 7 years, Gordon's Christmas missions had served over 312 homeless veterans, with the operation growing each year as word spread through the veteran community. What started as Gordon cooking alone had evolved into a coordinated effort involving his restaurant staff, culinary students, and local veteran service organizations. We've served guys who hadn't had a hot meal in weeks, veterans who were sleeping in their cars, men and women who had given up hope that anyone remembered their service, Gordon said. But more than the food, I think what matters is the recognition, having someone acknowledge that they're heroes, that their sacrifice mattered, that they deserve dignity and respect. The meals weren't just about nutrition, they were about restoring dignity to people who had often been invisible to society despite their service. Gordon would set up proper table service, provide real silverware and cloth napkins, and ensure that each veteran was treated like an honored guest rather than a charity case. Gordon kept detailed records of the veterans he served, not for publicity purposes, but because he wanted to remember their stories and follow up with those who were open to maintaining contact. His notes included information about their military service, their current situations, and any additional support they might need beyond the Christmas meals. Tonight's appearance on The Tonight Show was supposed to focus on Gordon's latest restaurant opening, which featured a menu inspired by his travels and military history. Jimmy had planned to discuss Gordon's culinary innovations, maybe explore his famous perfectionism, definitely tap into the passionate energy that made him such a compelling guest. The interview had started with Gordon's characteristic intensity and enthusiasm. He had discussed his new restaurant with the kind of passionate detail that had made him famous, sharing stories about sourcing ingredients and developing recipes that had the audience hanging on every word. But when Jimmy mentioned how much Gordon must enjoy cooking for celebrities and food critics who could appreciate his artistry, something shifted in Gordon's expression. "You know, Jimmy," Gordon said, his voice taking on an unusual gravity, "the most important cooking I do all year doesn't happen in any of my restaurants. And the people I cook for aren't food critics or celebrities." The audience grew quiet, sensing that Gordon was moving into territory that was more personal than his usual professional discussions. "Who do you cook for?" Jimmy asked, genuinely intrigued. Gordon was quiet for a moment, his usual rapid-fire energy replaced by thoughtful reflection. "Every Christmas Eve and Christmas Day for the past 7 years, I've been cooking for homeless veterans, men and women who served our country with honor and came home to struggle with poverty, mental health issues, and homelessness." The studio was completely focused on Gordon's words now, the energy shifting from entertainment to something much more profound. "These are heroes who put their lives on the line for strangers," Gordon continued, his voice growing more passionate. "They served in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Korea. They fought for our freedom. And now they're living on the streets, going days without proper food, forgotten by the society they protected." Jimmy leaned forward, clearly moved by Gordon's intensity. "Gordon, what exactly do you do for these veterans?" Gordon's eyes filled with tears, a sight that shocked the audience, who had never seen this vulnerable side of the usually fierce chef. "I cook for them like they're royalty, because they bloody well are. Roasted turkey, prime rib, fresh vegetables, homemade desserts, meals prepared with the same standards I use in my finest restaurants." The audience was completely silent now, witnessing a side of Gordon Ramsay that transcended both his celebrity and his culinary empire. "Jimmy, can I tell you about something that's become the most important work of my career?" Gordon asked, his voice breaking slightly. "Please," Jimmy replied, clearly understanding that something profound was being shared. Gordon took a deep breath and spoke directly to the camera. "For 7 years, I've been running a secret Christmas kitchen for homeless veterans, 312 heroes who fought for our freedom and came home to fight for their next meal. Jimmy's expression changed completely as he grasped what Gordon was describing. "Gordon, you're personally cooking Christmas dinner for homeless veterans?" "I'm cooking for them because they earned it," Gordon replied, with fierce conviction. "These men and women put their lives on the line for people they'd never met. The least I can do is make sure they have a proper Christmas meal." Tears were streaming down Jimmy's face. "Can you tell us about one of these veterans?" "Frank was my first," Gordon said, his voice becoming tender. "Vietnam veteran, Purple Heart recipient, living in an alley behind my restaurant, digging through garbage for food scraps. When I found him, he hadn't eaten a hot meal in 4 days." Gordon paused, gathering himself to continue. "I brought Frank inside and cooked for him myself. We talked for 3 hours about his service, his struggles, his dreams of getting back on his feet. That night changed everything for me." "What happened to Frank?" Jimmy asked through his tears. "Frank got into veteran housing 6 months later," Gordon said with obvious relief. "He volunteers now with other homeless vets, helping them find services and support. But most importantly, Frank taught me that cooking isn't just about feeding people, it's about honoring them, recognizing their worth, treating them with dignity." The audience was openly emotional, many people crying as they witnessed this revelation about Gordon's private ministry to forgotten heroes. "Gordon, how has this changed you as a chef?" Jimmy asked. "It's taught me that the most important ingredient in any meal is respect," Gordon replied with hard-won wisdom. "In my restaurants, I serve people who have every advantage in life, but on Christmas I serve people who gave everything for others and got forgotten in return." As the segment concluded, something unprecedented happened. The entire studio audience rose in sustained applause that lasted over 5 minutes, recognizing that they had witnessed something sacred, acknowledgement of true leadership in action.